Good morning. Welcome back to Morning at NTV. My name is Malaki Vilodera. Now, before we took a short commercial break, we had already started the conversation. How can we go about managing refugees in the country as a country, And so in studios, I'm joined by Dr. Sylvester Kugonza. He is the chairperson, board of directors at InterAid Uganda. InterAid Uganda actually works mainly on urban refugees here in Kampala. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. Somebody was raising a question. Why do we allow refugees to come into our country?
Yes.
Let's first go back to our history. There is a time much of West Nile people were in exile and they were hosted by South Sudan. At the time Ugandans were in Kenya as refugees, and there are many Ugandan refugees also who have lived in other countries. So just that alone would give you a heart to care for others who are in trouble at this particular time. But there are also international obligations. Uganda is a signatory to the 1951 UN Convention on Refugees. There is the OAU policy on refugees of 1963, and that gives us obligations to take care of refugees.
Right.
So there is a legal and moral
obligation
to actually take care of refugees. But somebody raised a pertinent question. Why do you count people when they are already inside? I had already mentioned that when they come en masse, they are running. They have just lost, a woman has just lost a husband or a child. He's panting at the border. So the immediate thing is really not to register this person, is to calm this person, to save life, humanitarian approach. Then after a while, a registration process starts. So the people who have been registering, say in Old Kampala here, they registered long ago. But because of a query about numbers that arose, then this was like a validation to verify the numbers. And as I've already pointed out, the verification had its own shortcomings, because those who have fully settled may not actually be interested in re-registering. There are people who have keep going forth and back. There are children in schools who could not leave school to come. Remember, this is examination time, who could not come to register. So this may explain. But indeed, in this country, there is more than 1.5 refugees, because of many others who just enter and settle. Now, coming to the other question of why are we not receiving refugees from far away, Syria, Iraq, and so forth? We have refugees from far away. We have refugees from over 10 countries. As far as Eritrea, there are Eritreans here. There are Ethiopian refugees in this country. Of course, there are those from Burundi, from Congo,
right.
South Sudan, Rwanda, and the rest. So and you find 1 or 2 Europeans, they are also here. But those will not be conspicuous, because you will not find them in the camps. And they will not be coming to get support. They just sought refugee status here, but they have means to survive on their own, and so they are not drawing on the UN support. Somebody also asked, why do you feed other people when your children are not well fed?
Exactly.
This is an African thing. If your brother or sister dies, even when you're already poor, you still take them and share the little that is there. But what we are asking is, those who support refugees around the world, UNHCR in particular, and other partners in this, to appreciate that hosting a refugee is a costly matter that needs to be augmented, especially for a poor country like Uganda.
Right, right. And when this conversation actually came up, and of course, like I said earlier, there was a probe that was done on this particular refugees, and this was between the government and the UNHCR. And they found out that the actual number of refugees in this country are 1.1, of course, and this is not the number that was reported. The reported number and what they were working on is 1.4, and so that's why we have the 300,000. And so we had the UNHCR country representative, Mr. Joel, actually responding to that particular story. So let's take a look at that.
Now, what we have now, indeed, that we're ending up with a population of around 1.15 million, 1,150,000 refugees, which is more or less 300,000 refugees lower than what had been registered by the government prior to this verification exercise.
We have brought in the police, the Inspectorate of Government, those two institutions to investigate all those allegations. And the UN also, UNHCR brought their own inspectors, their investigators, who are concurrently investigating not only occurrence in our field, but also their own staff.
As an expert, just help us understand this. What are the implications of having ghost refugees in a particular country and thinking that they actually exist while they don't?
Yeah, I have already mentioned that, yes, they could be inaccurate numbers because of the weaknesses in registration. And of course, UNHCR is interested in these numbers because they use it to support.
Right.
Support. But as I will keep mentioning that the actual number is certainly higher than the 1.1 because there are people who are not interested in accessing such support and therefore don't find it important for them to register or even re-register. If they registered at the beginning, now they no longer find it useful to register. And you know our country is so free. How many times have you been asked whether you are Ugandan or not along the street? It doesn't happen. Yes. So if you have found a way of surviving and without being identified, why would you be obliged to show up for registration?
But in terms of them that actually need this particular aid, and now that we know that, well, of course, you are not, you're skeptical about the number, the actual number of refugees, but what this probe actually brought out is that the actual number was 1.1, you know, as opposed to the 1.4 that the UNHCR was actually providing aid to. So when you look at that, forgetting them that don't want to register because they found a way of surviving, them that actually need it, what are the implications of that?
Of course, from the point of view of those who support, accurate numbers or the numbers themselves give them an obligation that there is such a number, and if we worked out a support rate of so much, so we need so much money. So it helps in the process of estimating the kind of response that they should do, and that of course boils down into money. And that's why numbers to them matters. And so if we have 1.1, then they would be working out where are they, if they are in settlements, in Moyo, in Ajumani, in Arua, in Nakivale, in Kiangwali, in Kiriandongo, and how many are in each of these camps, and therefore what kind of support should we give, what is the conditions in which they are, what kind of livelihood support should we give. But the number is also important to the government because these people access our services in education, in health, policing and the rest. So the numbers are important. They have those implications for purposes of planning and service delivery.
Okay, yeah. And you actually mentioned a very key point, and this is the management of these particular funds. In February this year, we actually saw 4 government officials get suspended, and of course this was as a result, and these officials under the office of the Prime Minister, and so this was as a result of, you know, a detection that was made that there was mismanagement of funds. So when it comes to donor aid, this money getting to do the intended work, what controls should be put in place to avoid issues to do with fraud?
First, and I will keep repeating, let's get a more comprehensive number, which is accurate. And the accurate number can only be got through electronic registration, where you use the bio data like thumb or face, so that this process of double registration is avoided. 2, when somebody is exiting the country, it should be known that he has actually now left. But as it stands now, somebody can go out, come in. I give you an example. At Uganda Management Institute, we held an international conference in 2008, and we had different rates for nationals and people of concern like refugees to attend the conference, and they had a different rate. So somebody wanted a lower rate, and our question was, why do you want a lower rate? Said, I am a refugee. And then we said, bring your paper. And this person had long gone back. He was actually coming from the other country to come and attend the conference, but he still held a document indicating he's still a refugee. And because he still has that document, he's still a refugee, even when he has already settled back in his country, he would be on our list. But now when time comes for registration, this person may not show up because he's not in the country actually. So I'm still doubting the exactness of the ghosts. It might be there, but not necessarily up to 300. And therefore, I don't know the investigations, how deep they went concerning fraud. But if they were based purely on numbers, the numbers need to be interrogated more, in my view.
And still under fraud, the management of this particular aid, because most of the times they take, physical things, goods and products. It comes to food, we look at, health, products like medicine and stuff like that. And still there's been issues to do with fraud with regards to that. So in terms of management, how have you been doing at InterAid? How have you been handling that to avoid fraud?
No, InterAid, because we deal with a particular group, in Kampala it is estimated that there could be 100,000 refugees. And the new figures which have been collected, we haven't got the exact number. We participated in the registration, but what I know is that this being a prerogative of Office of the Prime Minister, and now it was jointly done with UNHCR, the exact numbers will be produced and we shall know. But for now, out of the 100,000, we deal with about 50,000. And how do we deal with them? Only when they come to us with a need. If somebody is in trouble with the law, we have a protection unit, which means we have to represent them at police, or if it requires court, we can also represent them at court. We offer counseling services. They normally have, because of stress, a lot of fights, gender-based violence and so forth. We have a desk for that. We have community services where we try to help them gain some skills, or even find ways in which to make a living. Like we have some drama groups which we support, and they actually earn through entertainment. And then health. InterAid deals with not only urban refugees when it comes to health, but any referral from Naki Valley, from Kiangwali, from Kiriandongo, from Wajumani, from Arua. If somebody has a medical case which requires further management beyond what can be offered in those settlements, is referred to facilities here in Kampala. And once he's in Kampala, he's in the hands of InterAid. So these are some of the services. And we hand about 50,000, including cases that are referred to us. So for us, the exact number is not so important. It is the people who actually show up for services at our offices.
Okay, so what we agree on in terms of solutions, number one, how we register, how we go about registering this particular
that needs
refugees.
to be thoroughly tightened, and of course it can't be airtight until the one of Uganda itself is also airtight.
We need to know the actual numbers of Ugandans here. Okay, all right. So, and you actually said that electronic, registration would be the ideal route to take.
Because even accessing services, they would still have to put in their thumb or something.
Right.
So if it's a ghost, it won't show up. So if we have a biodata base where gives us the number, whether they are accurate or not, when they realize that without being fully registered you can't access certain services, then they will have to come, even those who have remained behind. Then when they come for a service and they access one, maybe a portion, he cannot come back. Because if he comes back, it will show he has already been around. But the same refugee could come back with a different name, and you will not know if you don't have that system.
And actually what you're saying is that once we have that system in place, it will sort out the issue of fraud, be it money-wise or product-wise, and all this relief in terms of food and medicine.
Yeah, and even services in the health centers, because they access our services, that also will help. Which are also, when the local governments are budgeting, they would know, they know the statistics according to Uganda Bureau of Statistics, but then these extras would also be known and they'd be factored into the planning, because it's already in our national development plan too. Yeah, the settlement transformative assistance that we need to do. So, but if the numbers are not exact, the planning will also be faulty.
Okay, and there will be loopholes for fraud as well.
And
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sylvester Kugonza, for coming in studios and breaking that down for us. We hope the government is listening. Those solutions are actually very valid. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So that has been it for Solutions segment. Morning Attentive still continues. Keep it here.